Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It, and we are still going to continue our series on doing a deep dive into every single NBA team before this upcoming season. This episode, we're going to be focusing on the Cleveland Cavaliers, but before we get into the episode, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Helps it out a ton, but let's hop into the Cleveland Cavaliers coming off of a very, very interesting and up and down season. I feel like the best parts of the season were with kind of the big four in Cleveland being hurt, half that unit being hurt with Evan Mobley's injury and then Darius Garland's injury. That stretch where it was just Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen and a bunch of their role players, that was kind of the best run they had throughout the year. It was like January to kind of early March kind of day. Where they were thriving. They were winning a lot of games. I know their schedule at that time wasn't the toughest, if I remember right, but that was kind of the best stretch they had throughout the year, and I feel like when they did have a fully healthy lineup, it was very much up and down. Going into this offseason, they had a ton of question marks, and when they're getting beat by the Boston Celtics in the second round, Donovan Mitchell gets hurt, they have a tough 7-game series with the Orlando Magic, and I feel like we kind of saw some hints with Jared Allen not playing against the Boston Celtics and throughout the playoffs, what it looks like when Evan Mobley is at the 5 and how that kind of looks in the outlook on this team. I think this offseason was very, very vital to them, not with more so the pickups they made for the team, but the head coaching change. Kenny Atkinson coming over from the Golden State Warriors. I think offensively, this team could take a jump when you see the development in where Kenny Atkinson has been as a head coach. You go to the Brooklyn Nets and the development of somebody like a Nick Claxton, a Jared Allen, when he was the head coach over there during those kind of Nets D-Lo days where they were kind of one of the more fun teams to watch in the NBA, goes to Golden State, and then you see kind of the development that he has done over there with some of those guys as well. I think Kenny Atkinson has an offensive mind, is going to take this team to possibly a next level, depending on the development of some guys on this team. So those are the offseason pickups. In the draft, they got Jalen Tyson. So a pickup that I really, really like. They needed to just get some kind of wing depth. I know he's a little bit undersized still, but they needed somebody that can play that 2 or 3 interchangeably. Because kind of outside of Mobley and Allen, this team is really, really small, especially in that 1 through 3. They don't really have a real 6'8", 6'9", small forward that you would want. And that's kind of been the main question with fans about this team is, when are they going to go make the move to get a small forward? Is it trading Jared Allen to go get the small forward? But as much as I did like to see Evan Mobley grow out and kind of be just more assertive at that 5 spot when Jared Allen was hurt, I think it's still a little too premature to trade somebody like a Jared Allen who is super, super valuable for what he does for you. It makes it a lot easier on somebody like Evan Mobley to not have to do everything, if that makes sense. So having Jared Allen is kind of like a safety blanket and a safety net, especially defensively, for somebody who is still very, very young in this league, and Evan Mobley. But the offensive side, I think Kenny Atkinson can unlock that offensive potential out of Evan Mobley, and that's kind of the biggest X factor I do have for this season, is Evan Mobley. I think his growth as an offensive player is going to be huge for this team because this team lacks offense. A lot of times you've seen since Donovan Mitchell has arrived in Cleveland, it's a lot of, if Donovan Mitchell doesn't have it going this night, what are we literally going towards? Like Darius Garland kind of having a really down year due to a lot of up and down injuries, knick-knack injuries that kind of didn't allow him to get into that rhythm. They need the Darius Garland that is an all-star to come back as well, and that's kind of a side point X factor as well. But I think the main key one is Evan Mobley and that offensive development. If they can get some more floor spacing ability out of Evan Mobley, then that makes it easier to understand the front court that is Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. But I feel like that's kind of the main thing that kind of does hold this team back, is getting Darius Garland to the basket, getting Donovan Mitchell to the basket, because they have two bigs that can't really space the floor consistently. And consistently, I mean Evan Mobley. He has at times been able to space a little bit, but it hasn't been really consistently at a high clip yet. And I think that's the next step for him. I'm not saying he has to come out here and shoot 10 plus threes a game. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but I think Kenny Atkinson is going to do a good job in putting him in better offensive situations to succeed. Going from Bickerstaff, who was more defensive-minded, going to Kenny Atkinson, who's more offensive-minded. And I think this is where that team really, really struggles, is on the offensive side of the basketball. They struggle to score. Like I said, when Donovan Mitchell doesn't have it going, this team is kind of stuck in the mud. They've always been a good rebounding team. They've always been a good defensive team as well, but it's just that offensive side of the basketball that's kind of held them back. So I guess you could kind of say there's 2 X factors. Obviously the one in Evan Mobley, which I just got done talking about, and then Darius Garland as well, because he's kind of that other piece. And I think Kenny Atkinson is also going to do a great job of staggering him and Donovan Mitchell's minutes, because I feel like there are times where you need to have one. There should never be a point in time in the basketball game where neither one of them are on the court unless it's a blowout situation. I think Darius Garland, to really get him more involved offensively, because Donovan Mitchell's going to do Donovan Mitchell. We're not worried about Donovan Mitchell whatsoever. And they gave him the extension, so you got him for another 3 years if I wanted to get that contract length right. But looking at this, I think Darius Garland needs to run more staggered minutes, where you have Darius Garland maybe starting in the second quarter off with the second unit to help him get into a flow offensively. Same with Evan Mobley. I think they have the ability to stagger a lot of minutes throughout the game to help all four of them get into an offensive rhythm. Is putting more so starting the second quarter with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley in the game, getting their rhythm going, kind of like how you really saw in that Boston Celtics series, and then having Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen both splitting minutes. So there should never really be a point in time in the game where at least two of the four aren't in the game together. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Kenny Atkinson kind of breaks that down and kind of gives this team a new look offensively and a new identity, which I'm really excited for. But X Factor, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, those two guys need to really step up if this team really wants to make a deep run, because looking at the hierarchy of the Eastern Conference, I think the Knicks are better. I think the Celtics are obviously better. I think the Bucks are better. I think the 76ers are better. And then they're kind of in a tug with the Orlando Magic and the Indiana Pacers. They're kind of in that tier in the Eastern Conference right now, but they do have the talent and the makeup to really put themselves into that top echelon of teams in the Eastern Conference. But my expectations for this team going forward is this has to be the year, right? My expectation is kind of make or break in terms of the core foundation of this team. You just extended Donovan Mitchell. You still have Darius Garland on a long-term contract. Evan Mobley still young. Jared Allen's on a longer. He has like 1 or 2 more years left on his contract. This is kind of a make or break year for this team in terms of them making another pivotal big-time move. My expectation is still for this team to be very active at the deadline. I think there's still some work to be done in terms of personnel on this team. I think they need to get bigger when you're talking about some of the wings that they're going to have to go up against, like Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Paolo Banchero, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. They don't really have anybody where you're like, oh, we're going to go stick those guys on them all game. They don't really have that point of attack defender outside of Isaac Okoro. And I think Evan Mobley, that's still a tough assignment for him to go out there and guard Jason Tatum on the perimeter for that matchup, if you know what I mean. But they don't really have that point of attack defender that's more of a bigger wing. So my expectation is for them to kind of be more active at this year's deadline to try to go fix that problem, because I think that's the only thing this team's really lacking. And I feel like they've kind of dropped the ball on chances to kind of go out and get that small forward that I feel like they've been needing for years. But I still think this team is going to be a top 5 to 6 unit out east, especially if they're healthy. I can see them being even higher on that Eastern Conference hierarchy, depending on how they're looking in the development of Kenny Atkinson and how he makes this team kind of have a whole new identity this upcoming season. My expectations for Kenny Atkinson to really be in the Coach of the Year race. I really believe in Kenny Atkinson as a coach and where he's been in the development of his past and where he's kind of shaped and helped people develop into the best versions of themselves. We saw that with Brooklyn. He was an assistant with Golden State Warriors for years, but I think this is a really good situation for him in terms of the personnel, and I think it kind of is going to work in both sides, and I'm really excited for Kenny Atkinson and what he can do with this team. And I feel like that's my main expectation. I think like he's going to be able to take this team to another level with the development of Evan Mobley especially, but my expectation, I still think this is going to be a playoff team for sure. If they're healthy, I can see them being even higher. I think they're a dangerous team if they are fully healthy and they can get that Darius Garland all-star version back with a development jump from Evan Mobley. I think this team is in the right position. But if they don't, this could be the last time we see a team of Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Donovan Mitchell all on the same team for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, very interesting upcoming season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That is all I have for this episode of the Barrel Talk Podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.